Hey, good morning, everyone. So this morning we have a virtual presentation from the Ministry of Land, Water, Resource, and Stewardship. It's a new ministry. So today I'll introduce the three speakers that are joining us virtually. We have David Fishwick. He's the Acting Director of Science and Guidelines and the Health Protection Program at the Ministry of Health. He's been with the Ministry of Health since 2001, working in various environmental health programs, and has spent the last 10 years on drinking water related files. Prior to his work with the ministry, he was an environmental health officer in various communities across BC, including the Peace Region, Fraser Valley, and Vancouver Island. So also joining David is Joanne Edwards. She became BC's second provincial drinking water officer in June of 2014. The Provincial Drinking Water Officer assists the PHO in providing oversight and accountability for the Drinking Water Protection Act. She's also a certified public health inspector, CPH, and has many years of experience serving as an environmental health officer, delegated the duties of a drinking water officer in BC prior to joining the office of the PHO. The third person that is presenting today is Megan McKee. She is a water policy analyst with Water Protection of Sustainability Branch in the Ministry of Land, Water, and Resource Stewardship. The branch leads development of water policy and legislation for BC, including development and coordination of government new source-to-tap strategy to protect drinking water. Megan joined the BC Public Service in 2021 after many years in local government, most recently with the North Salt Spring Waterworks District on Salt Spring Island. She began her career in the water sector as a water and wastewater treatment operator, moving on to increasingly challenging roles focusing on water quality and utility management. A strong interest in water policy eventually led Megan to join the provincial government. Megan's academic credentials include a Master's of Public Administration, a Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Management, and a Diploma in Water Quality Technology. So with that, I'll turn it over to the speakers.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Thank you for that introduction. I'll be taking the first few slides in this presentation. So I think we're going to start off with a territorial acknowledgement. So I'd just like to acknowledge now that I am joining you today from the traditional territories of the Snooney First Nation in Nanaimo. And I'll let David do his own territory acknowledgement because he's in a different part of the province than I am.
Thanks, Megan. Well, Joanne and I are both in the same place. We're both calling in from the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, today known as the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations. So, great part of the world.
Thanks, David. So I'll just give a brief overview of the presentation. I'll just go over the timeline of drinking water protection in BC and how it's changed over the past decades. Just a brief overview of the source-to-tap approach that we take to protect drinking water. And then I will be going over to and just describing the reorganization of the natural resource ministries at the provincial government that resulted in the creation of the Ministry of Land, Water, and Resource Stewardship, which has a new mandate to protect drinking water. And then I'll pass it over to David, and he will take you through the sections on First Nations and Indigenous peoples and on the Ministry of Health. So moving right along, in 2002, the BC government produced the Action Plan for Safe Drinking Water in British Columbia, and that has served since that time as basically the strategic plan for drinking water in BC. Following that, in 2006, was the Interministry MOU for Provincial Accountability and Coordination on Drinking Water Protection. The reason this is important is because drinking water protection, especially source water protection, does not fall within the jurisdiction of a single agency or organization, so there has to be cooperation across the natural resource sector. In 2019, I think you probably all have some familiarity with the Office of the Auditor General of BC, the Protection of Drinking Water Report, and the Provincial Health Officer's Report, Clean, Safe, and Reliable Drinking Water. So you probably know that there were a number of recommendations made to the Office of the Provincial Health Officer and the Ministry of Health based on the Auditor General's report. I think there are 8 recommendations in total. I think 5 for health and 3 for the OPHO. And so since that time, Health and the OPHO have been working on responding to that and making changes in response. In 2020 and 2021, Health and the OPHO reported to the Public Accounts Committee, which is a committee of the legislature, on the progress and actions in response to the Auditor General's recommendations. And so the culmination of that was in 2022, a new Ministry of Land, Water and Resource Stewardship was formed, and it wasn't formed specifically as in response to the Auditor General recommendation. It was in response to the fact that the Ministry of Forest Lands and Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development had become extremely giant and unwieldy and difficult to manage. And so the whole natural resource sector of the provincial government reorganized. And the Minister of Land, Water and Resource Stewardship was given a provincial mandate to provide leadership and coordination of a provincial source to tap strategy to protect drinking water. So the Ministry of Land, Water, Resource Stewardship, as we refer to as LWRS, was formed with that mandate. And since that time, Health and the OPHO and the branch that I work for, the Ministry of LWRS, have been working together to basically decide on how to divide roles and responsibilities for the various aspects of drinking water protection between the organizations. And the decision that has been made is that LWRS will lead and coordinate development of the source to tap strategy for drinking water. I'll tell you a little bit about the Ministry of Land, Water and Resource Stewardship, who we are. The ministry has a broad mandate for a number of different areas that include water, fisheries, and coastal policy and planning, and that's where drinking water fits in, but also for land use planning, policy and ecosystems, reconciliation and natural resource policy, cross-sector solutions in the natural resource sector. So the Water, Fisheries, and Coastal Policy and Planning division, if you follow the arrow across, under that division, there is under that broad heading, there is a number of divisions. One of them is Water Protection and Sustainability. That's the branch that I work in. The others are Aquatic Ecosystems, Coastal Marine Stewardship, and Fisheries, Aquaculture, and Wild Salmon. Within the Water Protection and Sustainability, within the Water, Fisheries, and Coastal Policy and Planning division, it's quite a mouthful, the Water Protection and Sustainability branch is responsible for a number of different strategies and plans that are related to water protection. The one that we are talking about today is the Source to Tap strategy to protect drinking water, but also for the Water Security Strategy and Fund, which you may have heard about, Watershed Security Strategy and Fund, and for Water Sustainability Planning under the Water Sustainability Act. So this slide is depicting the Source to Tap journey. It's just a really great representation of all the different things that touch on drinking water, both in the source water aspects and in the treated potable water aspects. So it really talks about the things that are affecting drinking water, such as climate change, activities in the watershed, such as forestry and recreational activities, transportation, highways, hazardous spills, as well as residential infrastructure, including sewage systems and septic systems. And then there are some things that, downstream also affect. It's water allocations, water quantity, discharges from industrial and municipal waste, industry runoffs, effluents, and chemical wastes. And then there are structures such as dams and floods, and there are emergency management activities that occur, agricultural activities, and they also impact drinking water source quality. And then we sort of have made this to show the difference in really what are basically source water activities and what are the activities involved in treating water to make it potable. And the intake is for a water treatment system is really where we divide that line. So following the intake, of course, is the part that as operators you are most familiar with, water treatment and water distribution. And just in the corner of the slide, there's a number of the different just shows the number of different acts and legislation that are all have some kind of impact on drinking water. So the source to tap strategy is a mandate letter commitment for the Minister of Land, Water and Resource Stewardship. I think what's really important to convey is that this change in mandate does not mean that drinking water is no longer a health priority. It still remains a cornerstone of public health and a priority for government to ensure the health and safety of British Columbians. The source to tap strategy will establish an integrated multi-barrier approach and will require support from multiple ministries. That will include the Ministry, for example, of Forestry. Forestry allocates water and authorizes activities on the land base that impact water. It's also a Ministry of Environment that does environmental protection and compliance and enforcement. The Ministry of Municipal Affairs, which has jurisdiction over water systems, public water systems at municipalities and improvement districts, strata systems as well, small water systems. So those will all need to be partners in developing a source to track strategy. LWRS is going to lead coordination and development of the source to tap strategy, but it will definitely be a very strong partnership with the folks at the Ministry of Health and at the Office of the Provincial Health Officer, as the expertise for the drinking water treatment and distribution lies in that side. Also, the new strategy will have to align with the watershed security strategy and fund, which LWRS is also responsible for developing. The source to tap strategy will be a standalone strategy, but some of the source water protection activities might also be actions that are implemented under the watershed security strategy. So they will be very closely aligned, but the watershed security strategy is ahead of what we're of where we are on the source to tap strategy at this point in time. The source to tap strategy is expected to cover at a minimum source water protection, clear monitoring and reporting systems, emergency planning for drinking water systems and sources, infrastructure planning and financing, water treatment and distribution guidance, and a small water system strategy that will be linked but probably standalone. So that probably is something that many operators are interested in. Small water systems have particular challenges in terms of funding and operations often. And so all this will be developed. There will be engagement and eventually discussion and consultation on this strategy as we work towards it. We'll be beginning to plan to develop the strategy over the next 6 months or so, and then development of the actual strategy is planned to begin around April of 2023. I think, well, there we go. So some of the key challenges and opportunities for both health in a continuing way and for the new work that for land, water, and resource stewardship is staff resourcing. So this is one of the gaps identified by the Auditor General's report was source protection. So that's new work, and that new work will be done in LWRS and with our partner ministries in the natural resource sector. But there doesn't actually exist people doing this work at the moment. There are some people filling some of those roles in the Ministry of Health, but we will need more staff resources in order to complete this work. Also, there are competing priorities and multiple strategies being developed. So the Ministry of LWRS is also responsible for a number of other strategic plans that are important, and often some of the actions will be the same. For instance, the wild salmon strategy and the coastal marine strategy. So of course, many of the things that protect wild salmon are also important for protecting drinking water sources. And it'll be very important that all those are aligned. And incident response readiness. There is a lot of knowledge currently in health and the OPHO about how to respond to drinking water incidents, and those occur really frequently, and that's new for us folks in the natural resource sector. So we're working on sharing knowledge and making sure that the staff and the Minister are ready to respond to incidents as they occur. And I think at this point, it's time for me to hand it over to Dave.
All right, so I think what we need to do is you need to stop sharing, and then I'm going to start sharing. There we go. And let's see if I can pull this off. Look at that. I think that's working. So I'm just going to back up here. So yeah, as we move forward with all of our initiatives, just have to reiterate that we do so with commitment to reconciliation, moving forward with First Nations. Minister Osborne who's Megan's Minister of Land, Water, and Resource Stewardship, will be leading future discussions as they develop their strategies. Obviously, access to safe drinking water remains a top priority for both provincial government and Indigenous communities. There's various ways that we'll be engaging with Indigenous peoples throughout the process, recognizing that there's tripartite agreements in place. First Nation, when it comes to drinking water, there's a little bit different governance structures, working with First Nations Health Authority versus the other 5 health authorities, and as well as we will continue to be working with the federal government to discuss options related to source water protection and develop their development process of federal water legislation for First Nations. So yeah, a lot of work to be done there. So yeah, that will evolve, and there'll be more information as that comes. So yeah, over to our program. And so as for the introduction, I'm Dave Fishwick. I'm with the Ministry of Health. We're the Health Protection Branch of the Population and Public Health Division. And basically our mission is to promote community environmental health, prevent disease, protect people from harm. And we do drinking water is a big part of our portfolio, but our health protection branch also does food, tobacco, vaping, climate change programs, among other things, personal services, swimming pools. So yeah, we've got a lot of stuff going on, but it's all sort of in the same theme of protecting public health. So focusing back to drinking water, we work with the Office of the PHO, and we're working with Megan and her team at LWRS to represent the delivery of safe drinking water within that larger source to tap strategy that Megan was talking about in BC. So yeah, I think we're at a kind of a pretty exciting place where I'm looking forward to having this new Land, Water, and Resource Stewardship Agency to try and bring together all the ministries that are involved in water and take that coordinating approach. And I think that's going to be a real benefit in the future. But as far as Ministry of Health goes, our role won't really change significantly, other than we'll be working with the other ministries. So I'll just go over what most of you folks probably already know. So yeah, despite the new ministry, we still do the same stuff. Roles and responsibilities essentially remain the same. So the Ministry of Health will be the steward of policy and legislation and guidance related to drinking water. The provincial health officer will still have their oversight role and a reporting role on drinking water in BC. Health authorities will still be responsible for implementation of policies and legislation in our communities. And also responsible, of course, are agencies like Environmental Operator Certification Program. As we all know, they provide certification of operators and classification of systems. And of course, huge part of this is water suppliers themselves. That's who the people are on the ground. operators of water supply systems, have big responsibility to make sure everyone's got safe drinking water at the end of the day. So, all that stuff still remains the same, and we move forward. Megan mentioned earlier the audit on the drinking water program back in 2019. So the Auditor General put out a report called the Protection of Drinking Water, and there were eight recommendations. 5 went to us, 3 went to OPHO. Most of these are done or pretty much done now. They related to the strategic oversight of drinking water, which now LWRS is working on. We're still busy trying to come up with a better way of collecting data. And there's still and we've done a lot of work on reviewing guidelines and legislation. There's still a lot of work to go there, but these things are generally like multi-year projects. And Joanne, feel free to chime in on the recommendations to the provincial health officer, but a lot of them were around reporting structures, yeah, that's your bandwidth. So if there's anything else you want to add there, feel free to chime in. But as we move forward, this is pretty much winding down from us. For us, as a lot of those commitments are either complete or underway and just need to carry on, and we'll move on. So back to health protection and bread and butter. So we're the stewards of the Drinking Water Protection Act and the regulations. And as I mentioned before, the Act lays out responsibilities for the Minister of Health, the provincial health officer, drinking water officers at health authorities, and water suppliers. It lays out requirements for permitting, water suppliers, delivery of potable water, notification of threats and hazard abatement. And as far as this group goes, it sets out the qualifications for drinking water operators. So that's an important role to make sure that everyone's certified or has the idea is that everyone has the training to do the job that they're needing to do. A piece of legislation that doesn't often come up is the Public Health Act. And as far as drinking water suppliers, that doesn't really pop up very often, but it also has a role in drinking water in that it can be used for setbacks from potential sources of contamination, and provides obligations for landlords who are providing potable water to their tenants. It's not one we often talk about, but it's good to have an idea that that's there as well. If anyone's actually ever tried to read legislation, it's not really that easy to do unless you have something specific in mind. And even at that, when you actually apply to a specific situation to it, it's usually challenging to figure out, what does this actually mean and where do we need to go? So we do have something called the Drinking Water Officer's Guide. It's on our website, and it provides, it's basically a compendium of all our health policy on drinking water. It contains sort of both legal, technical, and procedural best practices. And it was updated this year, so that's kind of exciting for us. And a few improvements are, one, it's been made easier to read, and it's consolidated a number of documents that were just kind of floating on the periphery earlier. So now our guidance on lead, manganese, rainwater, pathogen log reduction, and ultraviolet disinfection are all consolidated within the Drinking Water Officer's Guide. So it's fulfilling one of my goals is to make sure that guide is sort of the one-stop shop for all the information people need to know. So that's always a great resource. It's designed for drinking water officers, but really, anyone can have a look at it, and it really sort of helps understand what our expectations are for drinking water. We also have on our website a bunch of guidance documents for water suppliers. Oh, interesting. The font came out in different colors. It didn't appear on my screen when we drafted this up, but oh well, I think we can live with that. So yeah, most of these are probably familiar to folks. There's a source of tap assessment guideline. There's a source of tap screening tool, water assessment user guide. These are all, those three are all like various complexities of trying to figure out, hazards to your water system, so you know how to best approach them. There's an emergency response and contingency planning guideline for small water systems. We've got a guidance document for determining what systems are GARP, and we also have a small water system guidebook. And I'll in the next couple of slides, I'll talk about some other stuff that's coming down the pipe. Something that might be of interest to, particularly to people who are new in small water systems. I'm not sure if this group is particularly falls into this category, but it's good to know about. There's a, we worked with the over a number of years with BC Water and Waste Association to develop a project called Building Sustainable Small Water Systems in BC. And what it is, it's an online portal hosted by BCWWA. It has an introductory training module for small water systems that presents them with small water system basics. It also has an online interactive network for owners and operators that aims to bring current information and best practices. Allows people to share that, as well as provide a forum so people can have discussions with their peers. You don't always want to. I know people don't always want to go and ask the drinking water officer if they're about every little issue they're having. So this allows a place to find peers who have similar systems to yourself and communicate with them. And that's available at smallwaternetwork.org. Another initiative that we've done, which is kind of again on the periphery but drinking water related, is for communities where they're having lead problems from buildings. There's we worked with the Minister of Children and Families to develop a lead filter fund as a sort of point of use treatment for older buildings that that are used as licensed childcare providers to provide lead filters on the faucets. So if if your community is a community that has corrosion problems and you're not yet to the point of addressing those centrally, this might be a solution for in the meantime for people to reduce lead in childcare facilities. Yeah, flooding last year, there was a lot of it. And yeah, it affected many water systems across the province. Yeah, we worked with the Ministry of Environment on a flood water quality monitoring task force. And what that did was there's some contractors who went out and worked with the different ministries and the affected communities to evaluate risk to human health, as well as the environment from contaminants related to flood impacted areas. So this was in the areas of Sumas Prairie, Hope, Merritt, and Princeton. So the results of those studies are online. If you have your writing implements out, you can write quickly down what this is. But I think if you just probably Google floodwater quality monitoring task force in BC, you could get to those reports fairly quickly. Another thing we've been doing in response is trying to figure out how to map critical infrastructure better and include drinking water infrastructure. There's emergency response mapping systems out there, and what we wanted to do was ensure that water infrastructure was included in those in those systems that are used in emergency response. So we've been working with our partners at Emergency Management BC to develop an overlay that has drinking water infrastructure. And we've had lots of communities participate by providing that information. So that's an interesting initiative that's coming down the pipe. I don't think it's quite ready for prime time yet, but it's got some potential. And I think the last time we were here, we probably talked about drafting emergency response planning guidelines for water systems. We've got a small water system one, but we don't have a one for larger systems. And we started that process, and we had a draft. But when the flooding, when we had all the flooding events last year, it was a good opportunity to have a look at it again. And so we've kind of stepped back and revised it a bit in relation to lessons learned from flooding, and really focusing on not just looking at your own water system in isolation, but looking at in the big picture of the community, and when thinking about emergency response, thinking about how you can work with your peers in instances when your system is maybe overwhelmed. And so we look forward to releasing that soon, which hopefully will be a good resource for people. And we've been talking with Kalpna at EOCP about how we can work together to support mutual aid across water suppliers. So still lots more conversation to be had in that path, but I think that's a positive direction to go in. So I think that kind of comes about to the end here. So questions, and maybe I'll stop sharing this, and then we can open hand this back to the moderator, and we can do some Q&A if people have questions. Or, oh, there she is.
Okay, go ahead.
Question. When the source to tap strategy is implemented sometime in 2023, I heard, are the guidance documents going to be consolidated, or they are still be applicable on their own? The second presenter had a slide with different guidance documents, so I'm wondering whether those would be consolidated into one with the new strategy, or whether each one individually would be applicable depending on the case.
Yeah, so we have the way we've got it structured. Our guidelines, our drinking water guidelines structured now. We've got basically all our policy that's related sort of directly back to the legislation or aimed at drinking water officers is within the drinking water officers guide. But we have a number of standalone, and what we won't call them guidelines, but sort of guidance documents, so that they're not there aren't necessarily like legislative requirements. It's like these are just tools to help people or operators in their day-to-day work. So they'll likely still stand alone, unless we have some rationale for plunking them, for organizing them differently. But right now they're just all on the same website, and they kind of get updated over different time frames.
I would just add to that the source to tap strategy will be a pretty high level strategy, so it won't be dealing with any like operational policies and stuff like that. It'll have basically really broad objectives for the different aspects of the strategy, and then actions that government will commit to implementing in order to to actually protect water from source to tap.
Hi, my name is Ben Kinoshenko. I'm the utilities manager at the District of Squamish. And my question for you is, what type of resources or funding will be available to local governments to establish and enforce source water protection areas? And is any of that considered in the strategies that are being developed?
So I can answer that we're not there yet. So we're not that far down the road that we've been focused on clarifying whose roles and what roles and responsibilities go to which ministry. And we're just sort of finishing up that process now. So as we dig into actually, you know, things that are very important, source protection, you know, part of the plan is to examine the various tools that are, like do a review of the things like drinking water protection plans are a tool that's available that have never been used. And there are possibly other things like water sustainability plans, or maybe there's other tools. And so as part of the process of developing that, you know, there'll be an analysis of developing the strategy, an analysis of tools for source water protection. And some of that is ongoing now, but through the related watershed security strategy and fund. And government has made no commitments at all on what the fund will be used for. But certainly our partners that provide local governments funding at municipal affairs, that it will be very involved in making those plans and draft actions as we go forward.
And we have a question from online as well. The small water system is still based on population less than 500 people and not on complexity of the new water plant. Do you know if there's any, I think the question is there any changes to look at that for the future within the new guidelines?
So I think part of our commitment to the Auditor General's report and within the new source to tap strategy is to, again, start looking at small water systems and figure out, is the way we're doing it now the best way to do it? And I think we're at that beginning stage of asking that question. We haven't done any consultation. We haven't gone down that path to figure out where we want to go. But that's definitely like front and center as something we need to look at.
One more over here, if you can just pass it down.
Thank you. My name is Peter Glitzen. I'm from North Vancouver Island. I'm a water supplier contractor. So several years ago, I got into the source to tap, and I found it very valuable in our small water system there because it got me into all resources, Ministry of Lands and Forests, all of the ministries, and kind of helped me to plan an older system and to get me into the vulnerabilities and the risks associated with the whole system, not only the system itself, but the land use. So, and through consultation through geologists and hydrologists, they've used some of my slides for their own consultation and going forward to make our system more compliant. So the environmental health officer said, this is quite a task what you're doing, but it certainly did help. So I just want to thank you, and we still use it. So I'm looking forward to, the outcome of it and what else that you're going to add to it. So thank you.
Any further questions from the room? Anything online? No? Okay, so with that, thank you very much for your presentation. Just give a warm round of applause.